how's it going? My name is Jerry and welcome to the channel. Today we're back here in Sannikovland in Planet Zoo. If you're new here, Sannikovland is my current project in Planet Zoo, where we're focusing on building this really large zoo in this lovely lush tropical environment and introducing animals from a variety of continents. If you do enjoy the sound of that and you like the video, please do feel free to hit the like button and of course subscribe for more of this content. I put out videos every Wednesday and Saturday. And as it, appears, today is in fact Wednesday, which explains the title of this video. Today we're going to be introducing a few new species and we're getting to work on our petting zoo. Just want to say before we start as well, thanks for the support on the last video. I did just release all the items from the previous 13 episodes or so of Sannikovland, so that's 12 items that you're free to use in your zoos, so if you'd like to download that, please do check out the last video as well. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's build. So, as the title suggests, we're going to be introducing some camels today, some Bactrian camels. We're also going to be introducing a couple more small animals, namely the Indian peafowl and the Aldabra giant tortoise. Now, we've got a few interesting things today to talk about. Of course, we got our species profiles and we have the camels themselves and the petting zoo to talk about. For the camels themselves, we are having a relatively straightforward habitat, as you're going to be seeing on screen, relatively straightforward, very sandy habitat, lots of rocks. The main interesting thing about the habitat, I think, is the shelter structure that I'll be building later on in the episode. That's kind of one of the more interesting aspects. I did quite enjoy building this habitat, more so than I thought I would, because it's so much simpler than a lot of the habitats that I've been working on recently. In fact, this whole petting zoo I really enjoy working on because it's just so much less detailed than a lot of the other things. I'm not saying it's not detailed, I'm still putting a decent amount of detail, but it just feels a lot nicer to work on because I'm not kind of focusing on a million different things at once with climbing structures and building that elephant house that took a while. Don't get me wrong, I love those builds as well, but it is nice to work on something a lot simpler for once, and that's kind of what this whole petting zoo is about. It's about keeping things a little bit simpler, of course introducing some interesting elements while doing so, and introducing an area where people can come in and interact with a bunch of these animals. Now, you might think it's a bit odd to introduce camels to the petting zoo. Of course, people can't enter the camel habitat, but I thought it's a great animal to have a feeding station for. So, towards the side of this camel habitat, you'll see in a bit, I introduce a little ledge, and you'll see it in the cinematics where people can actually go up to that area. There'll be a zookeeper present. They could probably get some simple fruits and stuff and give it to the camels when the camels come up to the edge of the fence, like you'll see. And I thought it was a pretty cute idea. I want to do something similar with the llamas when we reintroduce them as well. So that will be quite a nice thing, and I thought it ended up looking quite good. You can see how I'm introducing the foliage as well, very sparse foliage, very deserty stuff, but nothing too different from what we've introduced so far. I just like the idea of this area of the park being a bit older, a bit drier, a bit less, I don't know how to explain it, but basically once you see me at the stable, which I'm actually going to start building now, it's a much older structure than a lot of the other things we've been working on. I imagine this is part of the old zoo, so really early on in the zoo's lifespan they built this area of it, and it was a lot smaller then, but now it's expanded so much, and we have all these really cool modern habitats the Indian section and the South American section, but this is kind of where it started, with these sort of stables which are a bit older looking, a bit more of a different style of architecture, and I really like the look of it. In fact, to really hammer down the idea of this being older than the rest of the park, I even added a clock to the top of the stable, so imagining that this could have probably even been one of the centerpieces of the zoo at one point, where people would be walking around here and there'd be a clock, there'd be shops and stuff like that, but now it's in fact become much smaller. It's become more of just where the petting zoo is. So I do hope that idea carries across. I think it looks pretty cool. I do think overall it makes the area look a lot more rustic than the rest of the zoo, and I really enjoyed that. As you can see, I'm also playing around with the shape of this stables, the building itself. I didn't want it to be just rectangular. I wanted it to be kind of connected at like a 45-degree angle, maybe a bit less, but a 30-degree angle. And I think it does look pretty good. You'll see, to kind of hide for example, you see when I'm putting the tile roof together, it kind of overlaps. And to solve that issue, you're going to see me do it now. I built a separate piece to act as almost like a gable to kind of cover the top of the structure. And I think it looks pretty good. It does kind of get the idea across that this building is definitely one of the older ones. The whole structure just seems like a bit of an older building. I quite like the look of it. And I think it really suits the camel as well. The colors, like the grey and the white, really suit this deserty environment. The kind of the aridness really feels appropriate here. And here's me just adding in a bit of roofing as well. You'll see me just kind of work on this building a lot as we go along. But here's the thing. This build is pretty simple, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to get to the species profiles now, and I'm going to talk about the animals a bit because I'm actually quite excited. I learned a lot about camels while we're doing this, and they're way more interesting than people give them credit for. So while I'm just doing the regular build work here, let's talk about the Bactrian camel. I'll just get the species profile on screen now. So these guys are, of course, a camel species. These guys are Camelus bactrianus or Camelus ferus. So this is a very interesting thing. So first off, you may notice, under IUCN status, it is both least concern and critically endangered. Now, how does that make any sense at all? First off, we got to break down the species. The Bactrian camel could actually refer to two different types of animal. There is the domesticated Bactrian camel, which is least concern, there's plenty of them out there, or Camelus ferus, which is the wild Bactrian camel, which, although it doesn't have a different name, is actually an entirely different species. The domesticated Bactrian camel and the wild Bactrian camel actually split genetically quite a long time ago. And the wild Bactrian camel is unfortunately critically endangered, with only a few thousand of their kind left, possibly even just 1,000. Other than that, we'll start talking a little bit about the differences, the similarities. The one we have in the game is probably a bit more similar to the domesticated variety, but if anyone knows whether or not they based it on the wild variety, please do let me know in the comments. I could be mistaken. So let's get into some of the interesting stuff about these guys, but first off, let's talk about their stats. Now, these are pretty big animals, weighing up to about 700 kilograms and about 3.5 meters long. Their habitat, of course, is desert, but you know, the kind of stereotype is that deserts are hot, dry places. But the deserts in Central Asia, in Mongolia and places like that where these guys live, can get freezing cold at night. So these guys need to be really, really hardy, able to survive both extreme heat and extreme cold. They live up to about 50 years, and their diet is comprised of basically anything they can find. They have impressive gut digestive systems. They can really process anything they find, which is so important for living in such a tough environment. So, for example, they can eat grasses, cacti all day, but if they run out of that, they can eat animals they find. They'll eat like lizards, they can stomp on them and eat them. They'll eat carcasses. You know, they're quite omnivorous if they want to be, if they're lacking any other nutrients. Obviously they prefer to eat grasses, but if not, they will eat other things. In fact, when they lack all that material, they'll even resort to eating man-made items that are just left lying around, like ropes, tents. They've been seen eating all of that. So very, very hardy animals, very impressive. And now let's get to some interesting facts about them. So first off, like I said, the wild Bactrian camels are a different species, and they are in fact the only true wild camels left in existence. All other camels, including the dromedaries, are generally considered to be domesticated, and any wild populations of those are considered feral as opposed to wild. There is a difference there. Ferals are domesticated animals that have become wild again, whereas wild animals have been wild since the start. And they're just very cool. I like I never expected camels. They're quite overlooked in this game in real life and as well. Like, nobody thinks to talk about them very much, but they're so interesting. Wild Bactrian camels are able to drink water that's saltier than salt water. That is insane because no other mammal can do that. In fact, that sort of stuff, even a lot of birds can't do that. Like penguins kind of can filter out salt water, but then again, most animals just can't deal with salt water, so this is impressive. One fact that might, completely take you off guard is the fact that they're really excellent swimmers as well. I never knew this, but apparently camels can actually swim really well. And another fact is that females can actually be pregnant for over a year, so baby camels are carried in the womb for a very, very long time. The embryo develops and, by the time it forms a newborn that's ready to be newborn, it takes over a year, so that's quite cool as well. But yeah, very, very impressive animals and so much more interesting than I gave them credit for when I started looking them up. So I think they're very, very cool. But yeah, let me know in the comments below, did you know this stuff about camels? Because I didn't before researching them. Very, very interesting animals, and it's one of those things where it just catches you off guard, and now I have this newfound appreciation for camels. They're just so cool. But yeah, today we're actually only going to do 2 species profiles. We are introducing 3 species, but I'm going to save the Aldabra giant tortoise species profile for another time, because we are going to be introducing them later in a later section of the petting zoo as well. We are not going to complete the whole thing today. We do have more sections of the petting zoo to do, so I will introduce them to you guys later on. But let us talk a little bit about the Indian peafowl, because these guys are going to be introduced here, and they're pretty cool too. Not quite as interesting as the camels, in my personal opinion, but very interesting nonetheless. So let's talk a little bit about them. So the Indian peafowl, let me get the species profile on screen. That's Parvo cristatus. Of course, least concern, you can find Indian peafowls all over the place, in zoos, in gardens, everywhere you go really. They're not very large. I mean, as most animals, they're pretty large for a bird, but not for most animals. They get up to about 4 kilograms and about 1 meter long. And their trains, the big tail feathers, which are actually not from their tails, they come out of their backs. Those get up to about another meter long as well. And their habitat is rainforest, dry forest, deciduous forest, grasslands, all sorts essentially. They live up to about 20 years, sometimes about 15 in the wild. And their diet comprises of a lot of stuff that many birds do eat: grains, berries, insects, small reptiles, that sort of thing. Now let's talk about some interesting facts about these guys. So their big trains, of course, are male peafowls are called peacocks, and they have those trains. That actually inspired Darwin's theory of sexual selection. So essentially, Charles Darwin, the guy who, if you obviously know Darwin is the guy who came up with the theory of evolution, there was a kind of flaw in his initial theory, which was that, okay, so if every animal needs to survive to pass on their offspring and, survival of the fittest type thing, why do peafowl have these giant trains that clearly attract predators? That's why he came up with a theory of sexual selection that states that, okay, there must be some trade-off here. Maybe the trains are increasing the peacock's chances of reproduction more than it is decreasing its chances of survival. So there's a trade-off there. And that's essentially very, very basically the theory of sexual selection. The peacocks with the bigger trains are more likely to reproduce, etc., etc. It's all quite interesting. I did a few modules on it at university. Very, very fascinating stuff. Do you look into it if you're interested in evolution? But yeah, very quickly now, let's talk a little bit about some interesting other... Oh wait, we've already talked about the facts, but yeah, let's talk about some others. First off, they're one of the heaviest flying birds, which is, again, quite impressive. And they roost in nests located in elevated structures like trees, cliffs, and even pylons, which is kind of dangerous for them. But that actually is a great segue into what we're doing on screen now. So up to now the building has been pretty straightforward, but now I wanted to create some nest boxes for our peafowls that people can kind of sit next to like you would have seen just now, I just put down some paths and some picnic tables for people to sit on. This area will kind of be also where the peafowl and the tortoises live. So here I am building our first nest box. I wanted these to be kind of like circular mini huts almost, where the peafowls are able to kind of nest in and just kind of hang out and get some shelter, and the tortoises are also able to use them if they're on the ground. So again, very similar to what I did for the elephant house in terms of building one side of the dome, well, dome in inverted commas is more like a very flat cylinder, and then repeating that structure and then deleting some to make an entrance. So you can see that here, how I've done that, and now we've got a pretty straightforward, pretty easy to make little nest box. And the peafowls do use this. They're really cute when they're inside of them. You can see them using it in the cinematics at the end. It is super cute. Really love seeing them use this. I wanted to make them a bit more interesting, so what I did was I put up a little rope from the top, and I wanted to make it almost like a hanging structure. So I used some bamboo pieces and create like a support structure, and then it looks like they're hanging off the ground. So I thought that was pretty cute, and it looked really nice. Like the aesthetic function of it, just, what am I saying? Basically, I just thought they looked cool. So you can see me there making that little tripod structure with the bamboo. Pretty straightforward, again very similar to how I make canopies for my other buildings. Just introducing some rope and stuff like that, and then of course just duplicating it so that it has a tripod type shape basically. Anyways, I repeat that around a few times and made a few of these. One or two of them are on the ground so that the tortoises can use them. 3 of them I think are hanging, so the peafowl can kind of jump into them or walk up them. I made some ramps as well, which do help them. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that I didn't really do much else. I included some rock work. I made some very rough perches for the peafowl to sit on, and that's pretty much it for the petting zoo. Well, for the first section of the petting zoo. To be completely honest with you, I really love the camel habitat part, but I did struggle a little bit with this part, the guest part where the tortoises and the peafowl are, just because I really didn't know what to include. I did look up some pictures of petting zoos, but a lot of them are very, how do I put this, very much like farms. They have like a lot more utilitarian kind of animal pens as opposed to like full-on habitat or recreations of habitat. So I decided to go with more of like a nature trail vibe for this. In the next section of the petting zoo, I will be including a few more animals. The llamas are going to come back from their long stint in the Animal Trade Center after like episode 3 when I locked them in there. Because if you guys have been following the series, I gave up on my llama habitat like right at the start of the park, and the llamas have been chilling in the Animal Trade Center for like, what, 10 episodes now? 11 maybe? So they're going to come back, and they're going to get a new pen, which is going to be nice for them. I think it'll be quite fun to reintroduce them as well. You're going to notice I do add in Aldabra giant tortoises here. They're pretty cool. I will talk about them more in the next episode. But as far as the petting zoo animals go, I think I'm going to introduce a couple more species. I'm thinking maybe the aardvark. I don't know if I've ever seen an aardvark in a petting zoo. I don't think I have. In fact, I don't think I've seen an aardvark in a zoo, period. They're pretty cool animals though. And they're one of the few animals where the guests can enter the habitat, so I might use them for the petting zoo. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think an aardvark would be a good addition? If not, what do you think would be? Because I'm still kind of like racking my head. Of course, I am tempted to add the lemurs, but I kind of want to keep the lemurs for an African primate house because that will be a bit more interesting. And that will be a bit further down the line as well. I don't think I will include any primates in the petting zoo at all, in fact. But like I said, still very open to ideas, so feel free to let me know what you think. Any animal suggestions you might have, anything like that. And of course, I'll be more than happy to chat to you guys and learn a little bit more about what sort of animals you would like to see. So we're pretty much coming very close to the end now. There's not an awful lot left. you're just going to see me do some kind of basic lock work to make the petting zoo look a bit more interesting, some light foliage, and then that's pretty much it. And you're going to see me, of course, introduce the animals themselves, and then we're going to hit the cinematics, which are a lot of fun today. I really like today's cinematics. I think they look really nice, especially with the peafowl sleeping in random places. A couple things I did off screen before the cinematics is I added a few statues of just the peafowl statues. I think they look quite good. They come with the base game. I just muted down the colors a little bit to more reflect the base Sannikovland colors, the orange and the pale green. I think it looks pretty good. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't have much else to say today. Like I said, next episode will probably be a continuation of the petting zoo. There, I think, will only be one more episode of the petting zoo. Depends how far we go with it. And then I think we're gonna go and continue our park with Central and East Asia. That's gonna be very interesting, I think, because most of those animals are cold weather animals. I might do Southeast Asia before that, but let me know. Would you want to see Central Asia and East Asia, or would you rather see Southeast Asia first? Southeast Asia is only about 2 animals. Central Asia is going to be a lot more, and they're all cold weather animals, so we're going to probably make a giant cold weather dome so that the climate can be controlled. And in there we can introduce all our Central Asian animals like snow leopards, pandas, that sort of thing. And I think that kind of works nicely with being next to where the petting zoo is, because of course the camel, the peafowl, they're all kind of Central Asian animals. The peafowl is but more South Asian, of course, but the camel is Central Asian, so that could be quite interesting. So let me know what you think in the comments. And let me know as well in the comments whether you've been using any of the Sannikovland pieces, whether you've enjoyed using any of them. Have you been incorporating them to your zoos if you like them? And if you haven't downloaded them, please do check out my previous video. I'll keep a link in the corner of the video as well if you're interested. And yeah, that's about it for me today, guys. It is a bit of a shorter episode. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the petting zoo. Hope you've enjoyed learning about camels with me, because I'm a little bit blown away. I didn't know about half these things when I started researching them. I feel like there's a lot of these kind of overlooked animals that have the most interesting facts. Who knew that camels could be such good swimmers? That just blew my mind. But yeah, thanks so much for watching this episode. I will do another release of the Sannikovland items probably in another few episodes when I've collected another amount, so that if you guys want to use this the peafowl nesting boxes that I made today, or the camel shelter, that will be up in the future at some point, so keep an eye out for that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you liked the video, please do hit the like button. Feel free to leave a comment down below, and of course subscribe if you want to see more content. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!